It's True Crime Tuesday on Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. Now, this next case we're going to talk about is something that intrigues me because Tim and I both went to college in Winona, right off of the mighty Mississippi, not far down the road from La Crosse, Wisconsin. Of course, we went in the late 80s, early 90s, long before these deaths occurred, but it is something that has intrigued me. And I know that there was a local news reporter here in the Twin Cities who actually got an award covering this story. She was looking into it being a possible serial killer crime. You remember this when it was breaking, Tim? And she was talking about it on air, about these facts that these bodies were being washed up in the Mississippi River, and wherever there were bodies found somewhere nearby was a smiley face painted.
I do remember that, yeah.
And was this the smiley face killer? Was it the I-94 killer? Is it Coinky Dink? Which is kind of what I've done so much reading on this because I've been fascinated by the case. So it was intriguing anyway to do this. Let's see if I can pick these calls up and not mess this up too horribly. And I apologize if I start dropping people left and right. I've got Neil Sanders joining us this evening, Scott Marcus, and Jay Bachochin. So am I close on that one, Jay?
You're perfect. You're head on there, Dave.
All right. Well, thanks, and welcome to the show, guys. You've got a documentary out, Scott. This is your documentary called "The Hidden Truth."
It's our documentary,
right? Okay. What brought you? Let's start off with you, Scott. What brought you to this case and wanting to document it?
Well, I come from a little bit of a unique point because I'm a published author on the paranormal, but I'm also a filmmaker. And the story really started with Neil, who brought this case to Jay. And Jay then reached out to me asking me if I thought it would make an interesting documentary. And so it was kind of neat being brought on not as a paranormal guy, but as a filmmaker, but it does help having a little paranormal background as well. And it was just too really enticing a story to not want to document the process.
And I thought what was interesting is that you took the approach of looking at the different versions of this story and looking at the, smiley face killer, the I-94 corridor killer, the coincidence, looking at some of these other cases, and then also looking at the paranormal aspect, which we'll talk to Jay a little bit about here in a few minutes. But Neil, tell me a little bit about your position. Now, you were working as the county medical officers at that time when this started. Is that right?
I have a long association with John Steers, who for 19 years was the medical examiner here in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I served as John's chief deputy for about 18 months, and then I retired in 2004.
Okay.
So I do have some information that is public knowledge. Medical examiners, all of our work is done for the public, and it's in the public eye. There's no hidden secrets in medical examiners' reports. Nothing is covered up. That's why we do the autopsy. So there's nothing hidden when a medical examiner presents the evidence. It is what it is. The evidence speaks for itself, and people are left to draw their own conclusions.
Let me ask you this, Neil. What about this case sent up some red flags? Because here you've got over a period of 10 years in a college town, you've got 10 drownings of very strong, athletic boys, young men that passed away. But it seems to me, and I'm not trying to dismiss the deaths in any way, but it seems to me in 10 years, 9 to 10 deaths is really not that much to send up a red flag.
Well, if you look at it from just the standpoint of the ones who have met a tragic end in the river, that's very true. But when you start looking at the overall picture of the geographical area where all of this is occurring, there was not only 9 or 10 individuals that have had a fatal result of their encounter with the river. There's been possibly as many as 35 individuals who have experienced an encounter with the river and have successfully either extricated themselves or someone else has helped them out of the river. But more importantly, we have a volunteer organization called the River Watch, which is made up of students from the 3 colleges here, all volunteer. And they are intercepting hundreds of people in Riverside Park, that area, every year. And they're only on patrol Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. So when we started doing our research and discovered that to one extent or another, hundreds of people are being affected in this geographical area by something that they don't know what is drawing them down to the park. So now we have significant numbers. And as someone with a scientific background and training, when you have that many people being affected in the same geographical area under the same circumstances, that's pretty significant human behavior, and it should be looked into and not just dismissed as drinking and bad luck.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk with Jay and his aspect of looking at the possibility of a paranormal connection to this case. And then we'll start to look in at all the different variations, all of the different theories behind this. What makes sense? What holds water? What do we all think falls apart? Stay tuned. More True Crime Tuesday continues right after this. Good evening. Welcome back to True Crime Tuesday, one of the rare cases where we can discuss a strange and bizarre set of deaths that may have ties to the paranormal. Jay, you're with Wisconsin Paranormal Investigators, is that right?
That is correct. And
okay.
Hey, by the way, nice lead-in with the Killers. I like that.
Well, Tim's my music guy for that. He knows where we're going. So,
going, Tim.
Jay, this case, I mean, you live in Wisconsin. You're focused on researching claims of the paranormal, strange deaths and cases. Now you're looking at what could be possibly a serial killer case, what could possibly be just coincidence, the fact that maybe there's even some paranormal angle on it. What was your first thoughts when you heard that there might be some paranormal reason that these boys are jumping into this water? And you know, I mean, did you think, well, that sounds a little far-fetched? I think what we're dealing with is drunk college guys.
When I first got the phone call or the email from Neil back in, February 2010, I actually read it, and I didn't follow it. I really didn't know. It wasn't until my friend and colleague, Alan Dunsky Jr., who kind of said, do you know what this is? He was the one who was actually following it, that kind of coaxed it to say, hey, you know what, let's take a look at this, because he was following it to the point where he knew that nobody was actually ever, pegged as a killer. There was always that theory, but there was never that evidence. So when we were brought to this, what does the word paranormal actually mean? It just means not normal. This case, to us, which we took on, we knew this was not normal. So that's how we got involved with Neil right off the bat.
All right. So you start to look at this, and all of these different theories start popping up. Let's start with Occam's razor. Let's look at the most realistic in this case. I mean, the most believable part, and then start to work our way out in the perimeters. Because I think we can all agree it's an easy assumption to say college guys getting drunk, doing stupid things, get themselves in harm's way, and they're floating in the river after doing such. Now, again, it's a small number that have actually died over a 10-year span. It's too large in general scope. But, only 9 or 10 deaths over that decade. I would have assumed there would have been a much higher level. And Neil, can you answer? I mean, is there a chance it is a much higher level? We just haven't found the bodies?
No, I don't think that's possible, because every time we've found someone, you go back and that person's been reported missing, and anybody who's lived in La Crosse long enough knows now that when a young man, any young person is reported missing, our first thoughts go right to the river. And I know personally, when I hear that, it makes me sick. It turns my blood cold, because I know what they're going to find. They're going to find a victim that has a high blood alcohol content, nothing else, no visible signs of trauma, no marks of any kind that would indicate foul play. You just have someone that, for lack of a better phrase, years ago this used to be termed as death by misadventure.
Right. And that's...
At what point do you start saying, well, that's just another one? I was born and raised in La Crosse. I was in La Crosse when you could drink at 18, which meant that people were drinking at 16.
Right.
And we didn't have this problem. This problem has got the people in La Crosse, the citizens that have been here, the people that have been here, that live here. They know that what's going on here, even though the numbers may be small in some aspect, it's not normal.
Now, there's an interesting point in the documentary, Neil, when you say your job is only to deal with the dead. Scott, did anybody ever think to speak to the people that did jump in and ask them what brought them to that point? Why did they jump in to the Mississippi River at that time of night? Because you said there's a lot of people that were fished out and were saved. What was their reasoning? Did they ever give you an insight that might give you insight into why the others did?
Well, due to the nature of somebody blindly going into the river and then being rescued or getting out on their own, under their own power while intoxicated, it's ended up being kind of an embarrassing thing, because there's a stigma. Somebody just got so hammered they couldn't keep themselves on dry land. So, no, we were only able to really talk to Operation Riverwatch, who was responsible for being down there and looking out for people and getting some kind of first-hand accounts that way, but not actually talking to people that, we would have loved to have been able to get a hold of some of those people. But
okay, well, with Operation Riverwatch, did they witness people going in? Did they see them throwing themselves into the water, or were they just stumbling upon the person in the water after it occurred?
I think it's all, and maybe Neil can correct me a little bit, but I believe it's all of those situations, and really sometimes most impressively, there were times where there was a physical confrontation, where somebody's walking towards the river, these volunteers see them, they shout, and they start telling them to stop walking, that they need to go home. The person's almost in a trance-like, zombie-like march towards the river, doesn't acknowledge them, really has to be physically confronted, and even at that point, they're still in some trance-like state, and they need to be kind of shaken back into consciousness. And it's only at that point that the people come to and they realize, whoa, where am I? They don't know where they are, how they got there. They just somehow found themselves at Riverside Park walking straight towards the river.
But they've not given any indication as to, I had a fight with my girlfriend and I was depressed, I'm failing geometry, and I lost my starting position on the football or baseball team, and there was none of depressive nature.
No, not at all. I mean, they just think like anybody else, just going out to, have a night in town, and they just end up finding themselves in this place. Very, very bizarre. Very bizarre.
Neil, with your connections to the coroner's office and the medical examiner, was there any research done on the 9 to 10? What's the total, 9 or 10 in that 10-year span?
Well, now there's a matter of debate. There's one individual that doesn't necessarily fit or isn't put into the demographic profile simply based on his ethnicity. But if you can get past that barrier, now we're looking at least 10. And I don't know. I kind of lost track of your question. I'm sorry.
Well, I was curious with the 9 or 10. I wanted to know, first of all, was it about 9 or 10 people total that we can kind of guess as part of this cluster?
We'll go with 10.
Okay. And having access to the medical examiners and coroner's reports, was there any research done? Were any of these guys on what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of mood elevators, antidepressants, medications like that. Did any of them follow into the fact that they were all dealing with Prozac or Xanax or anything like that?
Well, any drug like that would have come out in the toxicology screen.
Right.
Whenever a body is recovered, an autopsy is performed, and unfortunately, alcohol is the only foreign substance that was found in any of these individuals. There was no sign of any type of history of drug usage based on the toxicology reports.
Okay, so in all of those cases, in the toxicology, there was no indication that they were on any kind of antidepressive medications, anything that would have maybe precluded, because I know there's a lot of discussion now towards people that are being influenced by the antidepressants and mixtures of alcohol that bring them to depressive or suicidal movements.
No, the toxicology reports were pretty clear that alcohol was the only inhibiting factor.
All right, Scott, with that in mind, can you start to warm us up a little bit? I mean, there's a few different serial killer scenarios, or is the smiley face killer and the I-94 corridor killer kind of the same person? Is that believed to be the same killer, or it's two separate possible entities?
There are, I'm sure you could throw in Slender Man or
right.
any other number of other more urban legendy scenarios. I know people talk about a rogue cop that is moonlighting as a serial killer as well and pointing to some of these lacrosse cases. So I think, though, when people talk about the smiley face killer, they are talking about the I-94 corridor and that being one and the same.
All right, well, let's do this. We have to take a break. When we come back, start to talk to us a little bit about some of these different theories. And then, Jay, we're going to get to you in the next half an hour here as well about the paranormal angle and how that started to develop. We'll talk more about the documentary. And, Scott, where can people find the documentary?
Boy, Jay might be able to help here. I think it's thehiddenTruth.com.
Yeah, it's thehiddenTruthProductions.com. And right on there, you'll see to be able to order the documentary on DVD, there's an order tab on there, and just kind of click and follow.
All right, we'll put up a link to that at darknessradio.com. You can go under tonight's guest tab, and you'll find links to our guest and the information there. Stay tuned. We've got more True Crime Tuesday coming up right after this.
A cracker. Think I should get off her first. Think she wants some water to put out the blowtorch. Isn't me have a seat? Let me clip dirty wings. Let me take a ride. Cut yourself. Want some help? Please myself, got some rope, haven't told, promise you, haven't true, let me take a ride, cut yourself.
Welcome back to the show. This is Darkness Radio. Tonight's True Crime Tuesday. The Hidden Truth, that's the name of the documentary we're talking about tonight. We're talking about the strange case of 9 to 10 deaths that have taken place in La Crosse over the last 10 years. Strange deaths, very strong, athletic young men that drown in a position where they probably should have been okay. They should have survived in these situations, or should they? I mean, they're entering water that's fast undercurrent. They're drunk. They're, what's the word I'm looking for? Impaired by the liquor and the cold water, perhaps. There's not really easy access. And, Scott, you saw that while filming the documentary, right? There's not a lot of access out of these waterways.
No, definitely not. And even if you're stone sober, it would be pretty difficult to get out of these waters. So as the impartial filmmaker, I definitely went back and forth myself a little bit. Like, is this just coincidence and bad luck? But time and time again, especially as the investigations went on, but even just finding historical information too, eventually just too much information came up, too many little bits of evidence or circumstantial evidence even is just too much to ignore after a while. So I did end up believing that there is some other force that we right now can only identify as paranormal because we don't know what it is, that is at play in these deaths.
All right. Neil, the case of serial killer. You've got the smiley face killer, the I-94 corridor killer, this rogue possible cop killer. Now, first of all, is there any real evidence to substantiate any of those claims that something is going on? Maybe not even in this case, but is there really a substantiated case for these killers in existence? Do we know that there is, in fact, somebody working out there doing this?
Well, there have been several news reports about the various aspects of the possibilities of a serial killer at work here, which is one of the reasons why the local authorities here in La Crosse called in the FBI not just once, but twice to go over all of the records, all of the files, to see if there was any, even the slightest indication that there was either foul play at work here or the work of a serial killer. And in both instances, the files have come back with a report from the FBI that it's just circumstantial bad luck. So, have there been instances of a smiley face killer? We had one little thing that a smiley face had been found near the scene of one of the drownings, but that was the only indication. But when you have just sometimes even one indication of something, that's enough for people to grab onto that and run with it. I mean, after so many of these deaths, people are grasping at straws here in La Crosse.
All right. So how did Jay, talk to me about the weird serial killer angle? If there's only one of the bodies that's kind of washed up near a smiley face, how did the smiley face killer nickname get hung on it? I was under the impression that more than half of the bodies were found washed up in an area where there was a smiley face spray painted or marked nearby.
Yeah, I mean, personally, the way I would see this is that nobody really wants to know that, you know, maybe their sons, you know, were having a great night of drinking and, you know, the coincidence and bad luck slipped in, and just being able to, like Neil said, to be able to find that one smiley face, which is a universal thing to draw, you know, anywhere.
Right.
That was on there. That I believe that's where it all started leading toward. Nobody wanted to know that they were, you know, they were drunk, they were binge drinking, and this is what happened to them. So let's go with the smiley face killer. You know, that's.
But there was there's only one case where there was a smiley face near there. There was, because they've really made it seem like there was a lot more of these smiley faces that popped up.
Well, not that I'm aware. Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
Well, there have been a lot of smiley face killers that have been in the news that have been popped up. I believe that one of the Fox News reporters did a thing early in September about the smiley face killer. But as far as hard evidence goes, in the La Crosse River drownings, there was only one that had a smiley face that was coincidental to the case. In all of the rest of them, there's been nothing that you could link to the smiley face killer. I think what you have here is perhaps a little bit of journalistic hope, shall we say, someone trying to break the case and introduce evidence that doesn't really fit. And when you have to start twisting facts or twisting circumstances to make it fit your theory, well, your theory ain't worth anything then.
Well, I've got a strange little email that came over on my Facebook stating there is a serial killer in Illinois focusing on young college students. Young men who fit a profile are found in rivers and Lake Michigan on a semi-regular basis. And it says here, young men in college campuses are targeted. They are last seen in parties and found in bodies of water. It's not spoken about, but you will find bodies of college students running all over northern Illinois. Don't know for sure, but it does fit the profile of the queer questioning trade guys picking up the wrong guy and ending up in the river. Now, are you guys familiar with this going on in other states as well?
Well, I'm going to have to speak just quite frankly. My focus has been here in La Crosse. I live here. I'm a resident here. This is something that is affecting our community. I'm well aware of the fact that there are other communities that are suffering some similar instances, but I don't think that you can point with any regularity to that happening with the consistency that it's happening here in La Crosse.
All right. Let's take a break. We'll come back. Jay, weigh in on the paranormal angle. What are the possibilities that there's something paranormal involved in these drownings? How could that be? We'll find out more about that on True Crime Tuesday right after this. Welcome back to the show, Darkness Radio on a True Crime Tuesday. We're talking about the documentary, The Hidden Truth. Jay, let's start to explore a little bit of the paranormal angle on this. How did that aspect of the story come up, and what was your initial belief being an investigator of strange and bizarre situations anyway? Did it seem like it was a stretch that there may be some siren song calling these boys to their death, or the ghosts of Native Americans perhaps seeking revenge? How did the story come to you?
Well, like I said, when Neil approached us on this, he was actually coming to us because there were no more answers. The only answers that we have not looked into was the paranormal. And again, what does the paranormal mean? It just means not normal. When we founded WPI back in 2007, our mission statement was always to hunt the truth. We're not out there trying to prove that ghosts exist or Bigfoot exists or anything like that. What we do is we go out, we research it, and we state the facts and tell it like it is. So coming into it, we needed to look at all these other different angles that could be the possibilities, because guess what? I don't have all the answers. And while we're out there with me and Alan Dunsky and Jackie Moran, we have done some extensive research of different tragedies that could have possibly happened out there, because we all know, or we've all heard, that if there's a tragedy in a building, a house, or whatnot, maybe the spirit of that person could still be lingering on. Again, we're hunting the truth here, but we did find one tragedy, back in the 1800s. The steamboat, the War Eagle, actually was docked and actually burned, and actually there was a young woman, I believe she was about 18 years old, her name was Mary Burlich. She's actually buried at the Oak Grove Cemetery. We thought, well, let's take a look at this angle, and we actually went into the cemetery and, did some EVP work, did some EMF work, just to see, if we could, find something else out. So basically that is how we got involved with the case as far as the paranormal. That's our job, is to actually look at it, because, if it's a serial killer and it's been going on for so long, where are all these other leads? Is there one serial killer that's killing all these, young men, and there's not one trace by anybody, by the FBI? I mean, isn't that just kind of odd? You know what I mean?
Well, if there's a serial killer involved, Neil, I mean, the river would be the perfect place to dump a body. Wouldn't most of the evidence of what was done to this person perhaps wash away? Or if they were hit or wounded, would the cold water stave off the bruising effect, perhaps?
No. If a person is familiar with the geography of La Crosse, when you think about getting rid of a body, Riverside Park is the absolutely last place you're going to want to go, because it's wide open, it's very public. There are numerous marshes and sloughs, and there's a whole stretch of the river here where a person that was intent on disposing of the victims would have a much more secure way of disposing of their bodies and then getting away with it. Is it possible that someone is killing these young men and dumping them in the water? Anything's possible. Is it plausible? No. The evidence points to the fact that it's so far just drinking and unfortunate circumstances. And that's hard to swallow after all that's happened, and you've got hundreds of people. I mean, the River Watch is down there to prevent people from going into the river, not to rescue them. And they've done an excellent job.
All right. Well, Jay, back to you then, looking at the case and some of the weirdness of what's going on here and why these people are acting almost trance-like, going into the water to, almost a certain death. When you're researching this and you're looking at these cases, and again, you talked about the ship that went down, and as I recall, there was, is it Black Hawk Island? Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, and there was a travesty done there to anywhere between 150 to upwards of 500 Native American Indians that were slaughtered basically on that island, correct?
Correct.
Now, you talked to a few members of the Ho-Chunk tribe and talked to them about it. I mean, what are their thoughts? Do they believe that it could be ancestral energies calling these people on, into the water to do this to them?
Well, their beliefs, again, we have to kind of look at their angles, because who's to say what's right and wrong from what we understand of today, from what their generations of generations have, had, whether they're stories or legends. But again, right in front of La Crosse, you have the three rivers all converging directly in front of La Crosse. Okay, you've got the Black River, the Wisconsin River, and the Mississippi, and they all converge right in front of, La Crosse, right in front of Levy Park there. Which again, not jumping off track here, but why aren't any of these deaths happening just, right up the stream in Winona? And, and that's even more wide open and even more dangerous. But you've got the three rivers there, and that's another possible paranormal connection, because of, the water can produce those energies, and especially rivers, and especially three rivers. And I believe Preston was telling us about that, the elder of the Ho-Chunk, to where they believed that the water spirits would come up and actually take someone. But again, the stories, and I'm trying to get all those facts down, because they're just stories that were told to us. But again, they're talking about the three rivers, and that was one that just really kind of intrigued me, because of course we were talking about Lorelei and the possible connection of maybe.
Well, who is Lorelei? Explain that to our audience that hasn't seen the documentary.
All right. Well, Lorelei would be like a water. Well, I'd say a water spirit, a water creature of mythical Greece, and would actually be able to call the old sailors, the ships, get closer and closer until their ships actually crashed into the side of the wall because they're just kind of lured to it. Again, it's a myth, a legend, but doesn't some truth always start from legend or truth or from myth like that? So, with that being said, we're talking about the high alcohol content that, maybe somebody's getting to a certain level of consciousness, when they're drinking, whether they're doing drugs or alcohol, what do they call it, peyote, that actually gives them a different consciousness, that maybe at that point, at that certain level, they're hearing some sort of call. Again, not proven, just we're looking to see if this is even plausible. You would agree with that, right, Neil? Where we're talking about the high levels of content in each one of the victims, correct? Isn't that?
Well, they all had blood alcohol content of at least twice legal limit. And depending on the individual, alcohol affects everybody differently, but great amounts of alcohol affect us all the same. It gets us wasted. So at what point does a person have that increased awareness and yet still have mobility to act upon whatever perceived messages they may be receiving?
All right. Now, when investigating, trying to look and see if there was a paranormal angle, Jay, what was the first set of parameters? What were you going to do to try to start eliminating the idea that it might be paranormal?
Well, the first thing we did was Alan and I actually got 2 different times with actually 2 different psychics or mediums, if you will. We actually have never really used them before. We thought, anything at this point would be worth a shot. Where we actually did several investigations on the Mississippi, to be able to go over where the War Eagle was actually where it sank. To be able to go in front of Levee Park or Riverside Park right there on the levee, and actually even downstream. Being outdoors, we don't have a controlled environment, and we understood that, but we tried to take every measure we could to be able to try to, pick up any type of readings, whether it's an EMF or on any of our pieces of equipment while we were out there. And we actually did catch what I would call an EVP, which is actually in the documentary where you were able to hear it. Of course, we didn't hear it. Scott, you didn't hear it. The captain of the boat didn't hear it. Yet, all of a sudden, within 30 seconds, all of our power drained out of the batteries of the boat. We're just kind of floating along with the stream. And the EVP was actually caught, about 30 seconds prior to that. But those are the parameters we wanted to try to look at first. We wanted to get on.
Right. Now, that was on your second journey when they had done this before and the battery was good for 5-6 hours. You had not one, but 2 batteries that were fully charged to run this boat. Both batteries just stopped.
Correct. As a matter of fact, his name is Scott Johnson, and actually he's still using those same batteries, and this was several years ago, so there's nothing wrong with the batteries. And this guy is out on the river constantly, and you know the dangers of running out of a battery on the Mississippi.
Right.
So this was very, very bizarre. Even Scott, I remember you were filming. Everything just went black.
Well, let's do this. We have to take our top of the hour break. We'll come back. The Hidden Truth. We're talking about a very strange case. Unfortunate deaths on the mighty Mississippi and La Crosse. Stay tuned. More True Crime Tuesday continues after this. Welcome back. This is Darkness Radio on a True Crime Tuesday. And this is truly a twist on a True Crime Tuesday. We've been talking with our guests, Neil Sanders, who is a former medical examiner out in the La Crosse area. We've also been talking with paranormal investigator Jay Bachochin. I can't say your damn name, Jay. Just change it to Jay Bob, would you? That'd make it easier for me. Unfortunately, I have some bad news. We just lost Scott off the call while we were at break. Someone was shot and killed in front of his house, and he had to go duck to higher area to get away from what was going on. So our thoughts and prayers are going out to Scott, his family, and everybody there involved. Just keep him safe and hope that everything turns out. We'll update our audience if we get any more information back. Sorry to drop that bomb on you guys, but we were supposed to let you know that that's what's going on and why Scott will not be with us for the remainder of the show.
Wow.
Neil, let's go back into this case. What about this case made you reach out and especially on a paranormal angle? Why reach out for that kind of help?
It really wasn't my choice. It's kind of an involved story. My wife and I were getting our taxes done the week after Craig Myers, one of the latest victims, his body was recovered. The lady who does our taxes is a family friend of the Myers. So we got to talking about that. It was only a week old, and again, in the discussion, the different theories came up. Rogue cop, bartender putting something in people's drinks, the smiley face killer. And as a former medical examiner, I always kind of take the party line. We have the evidence shows us what it is. I'm sorry if that doesn't give you the answers you need, but that's all we have. On the ride home, I mentioned to my wife, Mary, that out of all of these things that we've investigated and looked at, the one area we've never looked into was a possible paranormal influence at work here. And that opened the floodgates. She related a story that had happened to her at school. She was going to college to get her degree in marketing, and someone had talked about the river drownings. And when I got home that night, I was just sitting in my chair reading a book, and my dad stopped by, put his hand on my shoulder, and told me in no uncertain terms that the paranormal was an area that I needed to look into in regard to these river drownings. Said, you've got the experience and you've got the knowledge. Well, that kind of freaked me out. The next day, my brother came by and pretty much told me the same thing, that I had to pay attention to what Dad had said and that I needed to look into the paranormal angle. The thing that freaked me out about all this is that both my dad and my brother have passed away. So for them to visit me and tell me I needed to do this was the impetus that got me started on the paranormal angle.
So both your dead father and brother came to you insisting that there was something else to this.
Yes.
Intriguing. Now, had you had paranormal experiences before, Neil?
Nothing that I would ever consider a paranormal experience. During the course of our lifetime, people get into things where their gut tells them that you shouldn't be there, you shouldn't be doing that. And if you pay attention to your gut, you move on. And that's the closest thing I've ever had to a paranormal experience. So when I got the visit from my dad and my brother, I had no idea what I should do, where I should go, what turn to take.
All right. So just out of curiosity, with the bodies that were found, how long was it that they had been missing? Was there, was it always that they were found within a day, a week, a month? Any specific ties to the length and time?
No, some of the victims had actually gone into the river in the wintertime, and their bodies weren't recovered until after, the early spring thaw. I think we had one, if not two, that were that way. And the others were in, varying time, 2 to 3 days, maybe a week.
And even after that long a period of time, they're able to effectively tell the blood body alcohol content?
Well, when the body dies, metabolism stops. Your liver stops processing the alcohol. It's like a switch has been turned off. Nothing works, but the evidence is still left in the body.
All right. Yeah, because it seems astounding to me that after that long a period of time, that they would be able to tell that. Could it be that the alcohol content was even much higher, but through being in the water that long, that it may have diluted the person and that content?
I think that that's a distinct possibility, but it wouldn't be enough that, it would get it to such a significant degree. You might be talking maybe 1 or 2 points.
All right. When you're looking at this and they did the investigation and went out for the paranormal angle, trying to see if there was some kind of connection for this. Neil, were you a little surprised that there really, aside from the batteries going dead and one EVP, were you a little surprised that there wasn't something more concrete, especially after the messages from your dad and brother, that you weren't able to get some definitive answer?
Well, again, I had no expectations. I wasn't even certain that I would get a response from WPI when I sent them my letter of inquiry. They could very easily have looked into it and done their research and said, no, there's nothing here that would lead us to believe that there might be something else going on. So it was only during the course of our investigation and all the little things that happened that couldn't go into the film because they weren't objective, they were subjective bits of incidents or evidence. So was I surprised that we couldn't find more definitive things? I had no expectations. I remember telling Jay and Alan when we were first getting started, when they said, well, what do you hope to accomplish? I said, I don't know. I think all we can do is see if we can find enough plausible evidence to show that it's possible there might be some external factor at work here. I never really expected to find a smoking gun, if you will.
Jay, getting into this from the paranormal and knowing that Neil hadn't had many real experiences, but yet a visitation from not one but two close relatives pointing him in this direction, did that kind of fire you up thinking that maybe this was going to kind of light up for you in a paranormal way?
Yeah, basically what I looked at when I first talked to Neil was that experience with his father and his brother. But at the same time, as long as we've been investigating, as long as we have never found an absolute smoking gun. So every investigation to me is going to be the smoking gun, the next one. So, with him, working on some of the victims or, knowing that they haven't really found a serial killer and there was no foul play, this was paranormal. Yeah, that is kind of what drove us of saying there very well could be. Let's go find out. And that's exactly what we set out to do. Neil couldn't have said it more perfect that, were we expecting to find a smoking gun, the Medusa of the water, if you will? Not really, but, it was worth that shot. And just to see if it's even plausible, possibly, a paranormal connection would have just been the reward in itself, and to be able to help not us to create a documentary or to sell a DVD or to be on Darkness Radio, but it was actually to try to find the answers, that maybe that the mourning families, could take. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to find those answers to be able to help them. That's how this really all kind of came together with the documentary. It wasn't to have a suggestive thought that it was something, paranormal. Is it plausible? 100% it is, and it still is. The whole case is still paranormal. It's not normal. So, and to be able to say that this is the end of it, we still have Neil out there with Frost. He's our ears out there, and we're always watching, and I'm always getting, text messages from Jackie Moran, who's always keeping an eye out on that stuff as well. So, this might not be the end of it, and the hidden truth with a question mark, may sometimes turn into the truth. We don't know, and we're just going to keep searching.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you both for joining us for the evening. Neil, thank you for your insights and passion and compassion to try to get answers for this story. Jay, thanks again for chiming in and bringing it to my attention. It's been a pleasure speaking with both of you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
To come on and speak about our film and bring more awareness about this.
I appreciate it. We'll have a link up to that on our website. You can go to darknessradio.com, click on the guests tab, and you'll find information about the documentary and how you can buy it and watch it for yourself. All right, let's get into this. Now, I don't know, Tim, as you listen to the story unfold, and even watching the documentary, it's certainly an interesting and intriguing documentary. There's some weird stuff that goes on, and certainly you get this dark history from the area. But we went to college in Winona.
Right.
And we knew a bunch of the jocks. Guys are always doing stupid stuff when we're drunk.
Oh, yeah.
And you think, especially when you're a jock, and this isn't a slam on jocks, young, strong bucks, they feel invulnerable a lot of times.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
And it might have been I am screwed. I'm going to hit this water. I'm going to cool down. I'm going to sober up and get home. Or, something as simple as that. The cases, and I guess I've got to, I've read different angles of this story, and I guess I'm still just as confounded today as I was when this story started coming out to us a few years back. Like I said, I've heard that there were smiley faces at around many of these, Now, again, they wash up next to bridges and viaducts and things, and it's one of the most popular things to spray paint or scratch on a wall is a smiley face. So I don't know that I necessarily buy into the smiley face murder aspect. And as I recall, I thought there was some of the personal effects of these guys were left behind in strange places. Some were left at the statue, some were left on like signposts throughout the area. It's an intriguing deal that would it be the spirits, the angered spirits of the Native Americans, possessing or bringing people to that point as kind of a revenge, but I also don't believe that's what the Native Americans are about.
Right. Yeah.
I think that they're, if anybody is an enlightened race of people that seem to understand nature and love and light. And, I would think and would hope that they're moved on to wherever, they need to go next. And that it's not some dark soulless entity that's trying to drive these teenagers into the water.
And an innocent teenager at that.
Yeah, but 10, and again, I'm not trying to dismiss the sadness of this whole story, but only 10 deaths in 10 years. I'm baffled by that. I would have thought in a college town, I'm surprised in the 3 years we were at Winona State together that some idiot didn't die in the Mississippi River.
You would think, especially.
I'm surprised I didn't die. I swam across the stupid thing twice.
Well, you shouldn't have.
No.
And they have that area down in Winona, the Levee, which is a concrete park where you can go and sit down there. And kids were known to party down by the river. If you went across to the Wisconsin side, they had bonfires down there all the time.
What was the name of it? Bud's Beach, wasn't it, or something like that?
Something like that, yeah. So the fact that there weren't more college students who didn't die down by the river or didn't accidentally drown is astounding. It's amazing.
Because I'll tell you, I was down there partying a couple times with our old roommate, Fib, and went down to Bud's Beach and swam across all the way to the Winona side and then back. And I did that on 2 separate occasions, and I'm not a strong swimmer.
And that's a strong current.
That's a very strong current. Right. And it's tough to just kind of kick back. The object was, this is what I learned, you stay on top. You don't dive under. A lot of people want to push under and swim. Yeah. As soon as I'd go under, that toe would start to pull me, and I'd lift myself back up. But I'm surprised there's not more morons like me that were doing that you just make that issue happen. Now, they said that, it's intriguing to me that they said that there was at least 50 to 150 people that have been pulled out. And I can't believe nobody that did that and then came out wasn't willing to come forward and weigh in on what it was that drew them to the water. Why did they feel like they wanted to go in there? Was it depression? Was it sadness? Were they just drunk and trying to cool off? You know, to me, it just seems like that's a big unanswered part. Maybe they can hit that up in the Hidden Truth too, and try to approach some of these people, even black them out and alter their voices or so that we can try to get a different perspective on it. I don't know. It's a strange case. Well, you know, and as long as we're talking strange cases here, Tim, I've got 2 strange eating cases. Yeah, you read that right. Oh, do we have a call about
we do
the subject right now? Let's grab Tony from East St. Paul. Tony, welcome to the show. What did you want to say?
Huh?
I said, welcome to the show. What did you want to say?
Oh, sorry. Well, I basically think these river drownings in Wisconsin are a matter of a variety of different circumstances. First of all, there is a certain amount of, I'll call it just drunken stupidity.
Right.
A. B, there may be killers, you know, not serial killers, but it's people, you know, who, you know, decide to murder somebody, you know, and make it look like an accident.
Right.
Or, you know, or make it look like the work of this serial killer, real or imagined. As well as a certain amount of people who maybe take advantage of that possible paranormal connection, you know, so to muddy it further. As well as possible, yes, possibly, last but not least, some possibility of supernatural activity, i.e., you know, there was tragedy there, and tragedy always produces that sort of thing.
Well, I agree with you totally. I think there's, you know, I don't know that I buy into any one theory that it is a killer. I just think over 10 years, people do stupid things. Somebody may have slipped. Somebody may have, you know, fallen in, maybe, you know, just happenstance puts them in that position. I mean, it does seem strange that it's always these specific type of young, white, 20 to 23-year-old men that are all kind of jockey and well known for, you know, being strong. And I think one of the guys that was actually terrified of water. That's why they said it was kind of weird because.
You mentioned that one of the possible victims might not have fit that category. They might have been.
Yeah, there was one.
I guess.
Yeah, one didn't really fit the category. I think he was African American.
Okay, he's black.
Yeah.
You know, it could, like I say, I think a certain number of killings may have happened. There may be a certain number of unrelated killings that have happened using the drunkenness, drunken foolishness as an excuse. You know?
Right, and that's been.
They died because of drunken foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
Also, maybe a certain amount of drunken foolishness, and last but not least, if there is a serial killer in the area, well, you know that a major factor with serial killers is the people try to copy them.
Right. Well, and I think we've talked to a couple experts through the years here that say that they believe there's probably active 4 to 5 serial killers in every state at any given time.
I mean, 4 or 5 every state?
That's terrifying to me. But yeah, that there could be. And I mean, where would be a better place than a college area? Because there are so many transient people coming in to visit, leaving, staying, making stupid choices, drinking and out walking by themselves. So you would think that would be a prime place for somebody that might be doing that. But again, you know, one of the other people brought up to me in the email on Facebook that it's happening throughout Illinois. You know, because I think a lot of people make a point out of, oh, well, this is so specified right to this area.
Reasons, like I've said.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot for calling in, Tony. I appreciate the insight. Very strange. I don't know. You know, I think the case will just keep developing. We'll try to know more about it, and if we get any more in the